everyone, welcome back to Hacky Lessons. It's time to start thinking about Set 2 decks, so I'll be going over all the archetypes and starting with the Navy in this video. Of course, all of Set 2 has been revealed for a while now, Japan are playing with it right now, but if you approach One Piece the way that I do with Digimon, that is to say, a little bit more casually, you may not be up with what all the Set 2 cards are, so here is the video for you. In OP02, Paramount War, as well as in Starter Deck 6, we are getting a new colour, black. The colour identity for black is board control, but unlike blue, which bounces cards to hand to control the board, black aims to reduce the cost of the opponent's characters on board so it can use effects to KO low-cost characters. The black cards in Set 2 are almost all Navy, the exception one of the leaders technically isn't, but do not expect the colour black to always and only be Marines. Aside from the fact that we do have a few Marines here in different colours, we have already seen that Set 3 has Cypher Pole decks in black, and no, that is not the Navy, a part of the world government for sure, but not the Navy. And there's also a yellow-black Big Mum leader. Yeah, so yellow is another colour that is coming in Set 3. We'll talk about that in a few months. Alright, the leaders. In Starter Deck, you get Sakazuki, aka Akainu, and he has a once per turn activate main that costs 3 Don. You may trash one card in your hand to KO up to one of your opponent's characters that cost 0. Yes, that's right, 0. So a lot of the black cards' effects to KO or whatever else requires the opponent's character's cost to be lowered all the way to 0. We'll get into how to do that in a minute, but for now, let's go over all the other leaders. Smoker has Don times 1 to activate main once per turn. Give up to one of your opponent's characters -1 to their cost. Then, if there is a character that costs 0, this leader gains 1000 power. So with this leader, if you want to KO stuff that has had its cost lowered, you will need to use an event card or a character with abilities, but the leader helps minus that cost, plus it gets 2k power for the price of 1 Don attached, essentially. So he's kind of the opposite of Sakazuki, that can KO something with its own ability, but requires other cards to lower the cost. With that basic head-to-head, I think Smoker is the better leader, though there are more leaders to see. Garp is a red-black leader, so yes, you can build a thematic monkey family deck if you want. His ability will minus the cost of an opponent's characters, 1 for each Don attached to either this leader or one of your characters when you attach the Don. Doesn't work on stuff that costs more than 7. However, if you can lower the cost of an 8 cost with one of your other cards, well, it won't have a cost higher than 7 anymore, now will it? My first impression is that this ability rocks, really cuts a lot of the hard part of lowering the cost by basically saying you don't need to use other cards to do it. The problem that could arise, however, is that if you need to attach most of your Don to lower the cost enough, will you have enough Don left to activate the event card that KOs 0 costs? Not that KOing is the only benefit of the 0 cost, but more on that later. Either way, I reckon I am playing this deck as it is. Garp, man. Last up is a movie character, Zed. This guy has Neo-Navy trait instead of Navy. There aren't a lot of cards currently in the card pool where that's going to matter, but there are 1 or 2, and that goes for his other trait as well, Film. There is at least 1 card that can be used on a Film leader, specifically coming in Starter Deck 5, and I'll go into more detail on that in another video focused on the purple Film cards. So this guy is purple and black, giving him access to black cards that lower cost and purple cards that ramp Don, and that is going to be relevant because his ability is, when attacking, Don -4 to KO one of your opponent's characters that cost 3 or less, and then give the leader an extra 1000 power. With the leaders out of the way, we can talk about the rest of the cards now. I'm going to split this up into 3 sections: cards that lower cost, cards that take advantage of lowered cost, and then generic cards that don't have anything to do with cost being lowered. First up with cards that lower cost, and in the starter deck there are a few characters with this ability. Halmepo and Hina lower costs on play. Tashigi has an activate main to rest herself to lower cost, and Sengoku lowers cost when attacking. Each of these methods have their applications. On play is the easiest one to pull off. Tashigi gets extra value if she lives to do it multiple turns, and so does Sengoku, who also puts in an attack while he's at it. In the set there are more characters to choose from. Tsuru is another on play. Sengoku is a 2k counter with when attacking, And Shigi doesn't have counter, but is a stronger when attacking. Helmeppo is a when attacking that gets bonus power if there's a 0 cost, so this card fits in with the section about cards that take advantage of lowered cost section as well. Kuzan, aka Aokiji, on play draws a card and then when attacking reduces cost by 4, so a pretty good card for sure. Nami's adopted mum, Belmare, was in the Marines before taking in the girls, you will recall, so she is a Marine and she has activate main to rest herself. Reduce an opponent's card's cost by 1 and then give up to one of your leaders or characters 1000 power. So it's a pretty useful little card. And releasing as a promo, most likely in Tournament Pack 2, is Axehand Morgan, which is basically the same as Tashigi, but he costs 1 more to make up for getting counter power. Sengoku is in Event Pack 1 and it can just sit there on board with a Don attached to give all opponent's characters -2 cost. Looking at event cards now, and in the starter deck is Great Eruption, which is a nice little 1 cost that draws a card and then reduces an opponent's character's cost by 2. Ice Age is a much stronger card, but it doesn't give you that draw, but it reduces a cost by 5. And then there is the Stage card. It is in the starter deck and it's pretty nifty. Only costs 1, reduced cost by 1 on play, and then can be rested for another cost reduction. This one isn't as much of a burden to have in your hand after you've already put one on board as other Stage cards tend to be, as it only costs 1. So you can, for example, rest the one you already have out, play a new one, and then rest that new one. That is a cost reduced by 3 for just 1 Don. So it really doesn't hurt to run 4 if you want this card in your deck and you want to have it on your board for the value every turn. It does only work with Navy leaders, so it won't work for Zed, as he is Neo-Navy. Unless that translation that I'm going off is wrong. If the card actually says if your leader type includes Navy, it would get around that. But if it just says if your leader type is Navy, Neo-Navy is not Navy. Once you have reduced some cost, you can now capitalize on it using these cards. In the starter deck, Kobe is on play, can KO a 0 cost, and Garp can rest himself to KO a 4 cost or less. So good that not everything has to be reduced to 0, as that would be a little bit harder with some of the bigger cards. In the set, Kobe and Sakazuki have on-play effects to KO characters, as well as the black secret rare Kuzan. In addition to his on-play effect to KO, he also causes all of the opponent's characters to have -5 to their costs. The question is, how will the ruling work if that goes into effect in time to help his on-play? Considering that he does cost 10 to play, I would assume that it is the intention, but you know how these things go. Bandai don't always consult their own rulebook when they're designing cards. And Garp is a 2k counter that KOs 0 costs when he attacks. Meteor Volcano is the event card for KOing, hitting 1 cost or less, and there are enough characters that can do this job, so the reason to consider this is the bonus of it having a nice trigger, which is draw 2 and trash 1. The other reason to reduce cost of characters is simply for the cards that have abilities which work once there is a 0 cost on field. Really punishes the opponent for leaving 1 costs on the board, because simply using your field card will make all of these cards go live. Smoker gains double attack when he has 1 Don attached and there is a 0 cost present. Similarly, Onigumo will gain Banish. Strawberry can't be blocked by 5 costs or less, and this Smoker gets an extra 2k, just like that Helmeppo that we saw earlier. Alright, on to now just the generic black cards, that is to say generic in the sense that they have nothing to do with reducing cost. For low-cost blockers, there is Tsuro and Rocinante, aka Corazon, and there's no 1 costs here, but at least these ones have counter power. In the higher cost bracket, there is Kizaru, which has a good thematic ability of not being able to KO'd by skills. And he also gets an extra 1000 power on the opponent's turn, which is pretty good for a blocker that's already pretty strong. Hina is great for shutting down 2 attacks, as when she blocks, you can choose a 6 cost or less and prevent it attacking for the turn. Isuka is basically Basil Hawkins, really. She gets to go back to active after KOing an opponent's characters. Django and Full Body are tag team cards. If each one is present, they get their skills. Django can't be KO'd by battle, and Full Body gets an extra 3k when attacking. And worth pointing out that they will work with any Django and full body. So in the starter deck there are vanillas that you can use. There's a vanilla full body, and if you put him on board with the 2-cost Django, the Django will get his ability. This promo smoker is another good example of a good thematic ability. With a Don attached, he can't be KO'd by characters that don't have the special attribute. In other words, characters with Logia Devil Fruits. Of course, there is the standard slew of skillless cards, as well as Sentomaro, which has trigger. And now, all that's left to talk about are the event cards for countering. Impact Wave is the 2-cost counter with 4,000 power that KOs active 3-cost or less. Almost the exact same card as Punk Gibson, although Punk Gibson's just a little bit better. Whiteout is honestly trash. It's trash. It's just a 2k counter that costs a Don. Remember that character cards with 2k counter are free to use. It does have an awesome trigger, I'll give it that, but I don't know if that really makes it worth running. Odds are, if your life is being attacked for the trigger to go off, your opponent is only interested in attacking your life anyway. So this triggers in your life, and then your characters can't be KO'd for the turn, but, they're attacking your life, so they're not interested in your characters. Maybe you don't even have any characters, but it could be valuable if you got a blocker out, and then that blocker won't be able to be KO'd. But I can't imagine this card sees play, at least until set 3, when black and yellow Big Mum Leader comes out. It might be a little bit more useful in her. A better way of doing a similar thing is with the final card we have to talk about, Yasakani Sacred Jewel. This card will be used when an opponent is attacking a character that you don't want to die. Ideally, when they have committed a lot of Don to the attack. For the low cost of activating this card for 1 Don and trashing a card from hand, the character can't be KO'd in this battle. This is an awesome card, and like I said, you use this when they've put a lot into trying to kill your card. It will be excellent value and really demoralize your opponent. Now, take a look at its trigger. KO an opponent's stage with a cost of 3 or less. Very spicy. Will be great against Kaido. And that's it. We have talked about all of the black cards. I must say, I hadn't thought too much about playing black until now, but going through all these cards in this video, I can see a lot of potential, and I see a lot of ways that it is an archetype that could fit my playstyle. So I may have to give one of these decks a go. For sure, I am leaning towards Garp at this stage. Not only do I like its ability, but, it's Garp. Alright, as I said earlier in this video, I will be going over all the purple film cards next, so look out for that on the channel, subscribe, and you'll see it when it's up. And I will see you then.